Welcome to this new episode of Unleashed. One of the crucial things I want to learn about every leader I work with is how they spend their time. How much of their time is consumed by the current period demands, the demands of meeting the revenue targets, the demands of delivering to the customer commitments, and the demands of ensuring the operations are running smoothly. How much of the time, therefore, is available for building new growth engines which will give them new sources of revenues in the near future or in the long term. I spend time with them to understand how much of that time is spent on building new capabilities, new offerings, new products, new go-to-markets, and how much of time is spent on building new markets and getting the markets ready to put their products to use. I also spend time with them to reflect on how they are spending time in building new areas which are beyond the current offerings, beyond the current services, and ensuring that the company is exploring all the potentials from a longer term perspective. The health of an organization can be easily assessed from how the top management spends time. If they are caught up in delivering the current period demands, then they will hardly have time to work on the growth engines. So therefore, it is very critical that they balance between managing the current period demands and releasing time for future growth engines. In our previous episodes, we reflected with Chris and Shibu how they, through systems, operations, and through empowering people and through running through data-centric organizations, release the time, release the focus to build and scale the business rapidly. They also brought in strong oversights through cascading of reviews and also groomed leaders through those reviews to manage the scale and growth. Only when such systems are in place can the leaders release time to build on growth engines. In this episode, I will continue my discussions with Shiv and reflect with him of how he's spending time and how his time is now put to use. I'm also joined by two very experienced and senior leaders, Vaibhav Tewari and Raju Venkatraman. Vaibhav has over 25 years of experience of building several organizations across sectors, supply chain, healthcare, BPO, and currently he is the CEO of Portea, a out-of-hospital healthcare provider. Raju Venkatraman has been an extremely successful serial entrepreneur, having successfully built organizations in process outsourcing, in information technology, and in the recent times in medical diagnostics. He was recently the chairman and managing director of Medal. The focus during the transformation of the CEO, whose journey is inspiring this conversation, was how he has to release time from operations and focus on growth. He struggled to make the change and struggled to get the systems in place. I'm reading an excerpt from the book, The Reflections Between Him and his coach, and how he is struggling to release time from operations. That's a key goal, I agreed, in our first meeting. Delegating and empowering the team. It frees your focus on new markets. Think of the growth you can accomplish when you have the mind space to focus on expansion, said John. Aditya nodded slowly. We also agreed that I'd streamline our standards and processes and then institutionalize them. The team then has their benchmarks, what to focus on and when. That's right. The methods must suit the business from year to year. So you must also allow the team to continuously update their formal ways of managing the business. For the next half hour, Aditya explained how he spent his working time the past month. He had set up a time tracker on his phone right after the first meeting with John. Halfway through, he looked dejected and said, I was focusing on the operational matters, wasn't I? I wasn't spending my time setting goals for the team. Very little time had gone into studying new markets and learning how to approach them. We did agree to a 20% cap on the time you spend on operations. I haven't quite managed that, have I? 40% time on operational matters? Aditya nodded slowly. I missed our goals by a mile. What specific reasons made you spend time on the operational issues? They'd botch up things? The answer was automatic, and Aditya looked startled. Do you really think your senior team will mess up things? That's not true, not really. I suppose if I think about it, I know they aren't going to mess things up. That just means I don't trust them, do I? In the previous episode, we discussed with Shiv on the exponential growth of Exotel. Shiv shared how the offerings have been expanded through acquisition. He shared then the focus on generative AI, and he shared that a full, very experienced team is now in place. We discussed how Exotel is being managed in an institutional way and how they are constantly learning and evolving the processes and systems. In this episode, we reflect with him on how he prioritizes the time and balances between current period demands and the future growth needs. We also reflect with him how his senior management prioritizes and divides the time between current and future needs. So from a smaller company to now a larger company, I just wanted to set this context. If I looked at your time spent, and if I look at, I'm just taking a 2x2 matrix where I know on the x-axis your market readiness, on the y-axis is your readiness. So if you're ready, market is ready, you're earning. It's a lot of focus on sales. Market is ready, you are not ready, you're building new capabilities, new features, new products, etc. You are ready, but market is not ready, you're building mind share. You're getting the market ready. And then finally, both of you are not ready, you're exploring something new, like maybe in the earlier stages, you were exploring something which was not legally allowed in India. So these are the 4 stages of the market. Your time, was it more on the you are ready, market ready sales, or is it more on building new capabilities, or is it building more market mind share or exploring something? How do you think your time spent has changed as you let go, as you build in more capable teams? How did your time change?
As a small company, let's say a mid-sized company that hadn't raised a lot of money, you don't actually have a lot of cash to experiment.
Correct.
There's an upper limit on how many things you can experiment with and how long you can experiment with. So I've always had one pet project or one new thing that we want to try. But I think that was a much, 15%, 10% of my time. A lot of my time was actually focused on running the current business because we were running at some 5-6% PAT. So there's only so much I can afford to, I can't take my hands off of the business. So that was on the pre-COVID piece. But once there is enough cash flow, or when you've raised enough money, I think your ability to focus a lot more, you can get in the skilled people that are needed to and let them focus on these things. And then you can actually focus on what's going to come your way next. So now after COVID for about 1.5 to 2 years, I actually focused a lot more on future. And it is also partly driven by the market, by the way. There are some trends that where I don't really feel like it's going to be a big deal. So I don't really try to pursue it. But there are some that feels like once in a decade of a moment. Those are the times when I actually jump more. For example, right now, I feel like that for generative AI. So right now, I'm actually spending a lot much more time on thinking about what's going to happen to generative AI and contact center and things like that. So I think maybe right now, 30%, 40% of my time is actually going in thinking about the future. Whereas, let's say 1 year from now, that would have one year before now, that would have been much lesser because there was only so much going on in the world. So I think it's also influenced by what's happening on the market.
Absolutely.
I agree with your point that letting go allows you to focus on the future a lot more. Otherwise, you are just too right here, right now, and sometimes you end up missing the bus.
Correct. So how as an organization per se, like if I look at your SG&A and all those things, so there are certain people in the earn bucket. That means they're so much focused on this quarter because you may alluded to OKRs. OKRs are very much this quarter kind of thing. But there is a lot of, not just you, if you're looking at for 30 to 40% of time for the future bets, which are going to probably come like 2 quarters down or 6 quarters down or 5 quarters down the road, How much of your top leadership now, because it is good running operations and you have next layers are also building in, are spending time where?
So the sales teams and the revenue teams are obviously focused on the current quarter. So that's what they're focused on. Then we have the engineering team that's partly focused on serving the current customers and the past customers, and then partly building what's coming in the next quarter, next to next quarter thing. And then I also actually have a strategy team, somewhat like a chief strategy officer, plus a few engineers, and then there's one or two business people there. And then they also directly report to me. That's the team that's actually working on the future projects. But having said that, it's not very, in our case, it's not necessarily very research oriented. It is still essentially the timeline of revenues is what matters, is what changes. So the sales and the business guys are like for this quarter, the engineering team is more like this year, whereas the strategy team is more like next year bookings. So so in that sense, they're all working towards the same thing, but it's in different timelines.
So there's a lot of balance happening. So in the organization, the balance is happening. That are you ahead of the market in any of these things?
In one area we are, which is the voice contact center piece. Ours is probably the best. Actually, in general, the voice platform, ours is likely the market leader. But in many other areas, we are also a challenger. So there we are all building more capabilities. So that's how it also works, by the way. So you can't be like market leaders in multiple things at the same time. Shiv shared a very interesting practice of how he's dividing work between different groups with a clear idea of when each of these work groups are going to deliver results. Some are going to give results immediately in the near future. Some are going to give results in the medium term, and some are meant to give results in the longer term. It's a very interesting way of managing the direction of the business. It gives a clear clarity of what outcomes to expect when, and it also helps the leadership to organize and give right support to all the initiatives. Those in the immediate near future may require interventions which are urgent and immediate, while those in the medium and long term require a different kind of governance, more focused on if the direction is right, if the progress is right, and if the right foundations are in place to yield the results in the right time frame. So I think this is a very interesting management practices being followed at Exotel. Vaibhav runs complex operations of medical care at home for hundreds and thousands of people across multiple cities. His company is constantly adding new services based on the market demand. He's building and managing relationships. He's managing large workforce with varied capabilities, doctors, paramedics, administrators, sales, and so on. I was very intrigued of how Vaibhav divides time, where does he focus, how effectively he balances between the current period and the growth requirements. Here are my reflections with him. So if I look at a 2x2 matrix, let's say market readiness and your readiness. So if market is ready, you are ready, it's earned. So all your regional sales, your branches, your product people also are all focused on. And every quarter, I think it's an immediate next 3 months. You're building new offerings, you're fine-tuning new offerings, you're building infrastructure to deliver it, training people. So that's your enable. You're building the capabilities there. Then you're exploring, should I offer something more? Should I add value add stuff? There is thing. And then there you're launching new things which they needs mind share. As a leader. So it looks like a lot of things are streamlined. And so therefore, there's less focus on earn because you let it to the individual branches to really deliver that. But this seems to have over a period of time build that confidence. So today, if I could probably maybe, I think very low percentage of your time happens there. With direct product people delivering like coming to you and you're reporting into you, there may be a lot of your time going here as well as going into, like how do I build a mind share for more and more people to come. Is that right?
Yes. So you are right. I mean, I would say that 60 to 70% of my time goes into figuring out the new growth strategy, new stuff. Now 30% goes into basically day to day.
So it's brilliant situation even. When did this change? Because a lot of companies like I know still struggle, leaders struggle being 80% and that's where I think you seem to have very effectively delegated, very effectively let go. And I think even process systems, everything seemed to really fine-tuned.
Yeah.
What was the turning point for this?
So I would say the turning point was post-COVID. I think when we started Looker. So one thing which we learned, I think in the initial 4 or 5 years, given that technology was not so prevalent, also usage was not so prevalent, the class of people we were working with. So there, I think enough manual thing was there, and because of our business models also went through a lot of changes with pre-COVID, post-COVID. Pre-COVID, we had most of the people who were our own employees. During COVID, because market changed so much, we also had consultants and freelancers. Now we are more like 50-50 or 60-40 in terms of in favor of our employees, direct employees. So model of how you work with each of these also changed. But I would say COVID was probably the transition point where we realized that we have to just add a lot more systems into place to scale this next level. So I would say last 2 years, if you say beginning of like 2009, 2021, we put this strategy saying go digital, go 100. So we said, let's get to 100 cities and let's make everything digital driven. So from then gradually the focus on day-to-day is continuously coming down because, these branches are running it and everybody looks at the same system. Before that, I think whatever you said, a patient is like, because end of the day is a clinician is working with patient in their house, right? And then you have team leader and then you have manager and all of that. So there enough and more people involved in that. So there was enough guesswork, there's enough touch and feel kind of thing. So you still focus on handling patient well. But all the parameters, all the what we call length of stay. So today, if a patient comes first day, right? Basis the medical condition, my system predicts their length of stay with me. Then I'll track the team against that. So 3 years back, it was not system driven. It was more of like saying that SME will go, he will fill up a form and basically tell what's the length of stay. Today, and that could be different between what central team says, what regional team says. Today, it's basically one number. So everybody gets measured with that, I think. So that has helped us to basically say day-to-day run. Of course, things break because it's a people-driven business. But I would say, so if you say last 2 years, my time would have gone 30% day-to-day, 30% implementing new initiatives for day-to-day. This whole digitalization has been a big focus area in last 2 years. Now I think
efforts are not really.
Yes, now the efforts are showing results.
This is a learning from everybody to also let's start focusing.
Yes, and also see benefit out of it. See, now my regional managers say they come with ideas of what new to add. Like even 1 year back, the idea was, did you open the dashboard? So now we say when you come for a review. So for me, I run one weekly review with each region for 30 to 45 minutes. That's my spend on day-to-day. Time I spend on day-to-day. So that's where, now we only review dashboards. You cannot open Excel sheets.
Systems and the processes and the empowerment. I think all the combination has really.
So this has become easy. So today is like, if I were to join as a new regional manager, I exactly know what I have to supposed to do in first 1 hour.
Clearly, as the systems stabilized, clearly as the systems got digitized, Vaibhav's comfort and confidence that the current period results will be consistently delivered improved. He then could shift his attention from current period to more time on building the growth engines the company needs. Raju Venkatraman has deep experience of building successful companies, scaling them up, rapidly growing in multiple domains and in multiple continents. I reflected with him his perspectives around balancing a leader's time between current period and future growth. I look at it from a fourth. There is certain thing which is they are creating products which is market is ready and the company is also ready to sell. So that means the selling happens. That means which is more near term. That is this quarter, next quarter, you're selling products and services which are relevant to the market and therefore you're earning your entire, this is what gets your this quarter's revenues or next few quarters revenues. But you're also having growth engines where you're preparing for the future in terms of adding new capabilities, new products, new services. So where market is still, you already know there's a demand in the market, but you are getting ready to address that gap or your own gap to address the market. There may be very instances where you are ahead of the market needs. You're building capability, you have already built capabilities, products, services, which now need to get a mind share. And of course, you're also looking at something completely explorative, saying, what should I work on something which is from a long time. I just look at it in these 4 boxes. Yeah. And I always try to understand where does time get spent. Obviously, when you're starting, a lot of time gets spending in getting the organization off the foot and you're working on the earn. But as you settle down as a leader, you have to work on your growth engines. Either you're building capabilities for the future, or you're building a market on offers and so on, or you're exploring completely something out these things. Where do you think your journeys, these buckets were, and where do you think today, when a lot of entrepreneurs I see, where do you think I think they should be spending time?
I mean, this goes back to, I don't remember the author, but in a class in Harvard or something, I was taught present and future curves.
Correct.
The organization has a present curve. You are here, it will take you here, but then the F curve.
Yeah.
I would say that I would spend probably 20 to 30% of my time in preparing for the F curve. F curve would mean whatever the technology, who would be the person leading it, who are the people from the current team that I can move, who will run the current present business, right? So I would say that entrepreneurs must spend time dreaming the future, and the future can be 3 to 5 years, not 20 years.
Correct.
It has a meaningful. And what will it take? Do we have internal resources to get to the future curve, or do we need to bring investors and convince them to do that? I think a balanced entrepreneur inherently gets the present and the future very, very well. They may not articulate it, but they do get it. And I think on the present also, I would say I used to spend on the time of 70%, I would say 25% of my time went into developing leaders. And that will be through reviews.
Correct.
And in the review, you start asking the questions that are relevant so that they learn, not to pound the table and say that. You create a learning environment where people feel, yeah, I could have done this better.
Correct.
Rather than I am bad.
It's a very constructive way of looking at it.
And it may look tough, but but sometimes the messages don't go unless it is hit on the head with a 2x2 hammer, right?
Absolutely.
And that too, younger leaders, you want them to start believing in themselves, building their skills and becoming great leaders, right? So that journey consumed time. Of course, customers. I would say the greatest sin any entrepreneur can do is not spending time with customers. And spend equal amount of time with customers. And then your financial systems and processes, make sure that they are relevant to you. Yeah, a chartered accountant will come, a management accountant will come and give me reports. But then I don't get a feel whether, I get project profitability, I get product, there's all that. But at the end of the day, your dashboard is the present curve generating the cash that it is supposed to do ultimately. Yeah. And is the future curve, which may be somewhat tied to the present curve, or it is completely a non-linear plan that you have. I think recognizing the fact that, but when do you start thinking? From my experience, I've gone through survival mode, stable mode, strong mode, synergistic modes, right? At the survival mode, you survive. Otherwise, you become a roadkill.
Yeah.
And when you become stable, you start thinking a little bit of making sure that your systems for the present curve are right.
Yeah.
And you start giving 10% of your time to the future curve. And when the stability is established and you're strong.
Raju Venkatraman brings a very interesting perspective of grooming people and ensuring that they are future ready. He invested significant time on people, grooming them, getting them ready to manage the scaled business. He also brings in a very interesting perspective of leaders spending time with the customers, spending time in the market, and how critical it is for them to effectively manage, scale, and grow any business. Scaling up businesses and growing clearly requires the leadership to spend time on the future. The degree may vary from time to time and the stage of evolution. This requires a strong institutional way of running and building the right team. Trust in people and empowering the team is critical. In the next episode, we will reflect with various leaders on the importance of people, building the right teams, trusting them, and empowering them for strategic and competitive advantage.